Adonai roi lo echad. Min yodeshem yahar b'tzeini al menchod yinaleini. Nafshi yeshofei, nafshi yeshofei. Yavan chayni v'mavle tzedek למען שמו, גם כי הלך בקדש המוות, לא ירא כי אתה עמדי, שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. תעברוך לפני, תעברוך לפני שולחן, נגד צורריי, נגד צורריי, נשמת בשמן, נשמת בשמן ראשי, כל מסיר ביד, כל מסיר ביד, אהבתו בחסד, ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לעורר ימים. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He has me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He guides me on paths of righteousness. He revives my soul for the sake of His glory. Though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod do comfort me. You set a table in the sight of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall abide in the house of the Lord forever. And we'll say amen. We have come together, sharing our sorrow, to bid farewell to Howard Alan Kramer. We recall the blessing of his life. We thank God for all that was good and true in his life, and for the precious memories which shall endure. At this point, I'd like to invite Julie, and then first Jacob, then Julie, and after that will be Sarah, and also Julie, right? So, whatever order I just said, just.
It's nice to see you all here. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure what to say, so I thought I would organize this speech around what seemed to me to have been several key turning points in my father's life and our relationship. My father grew up in Scranton. His dad, Jacob Kramer, after my name, immigrated from Moldova to work in a butcher shop, which was owned by his family, which he developed into a meatpacking plant, Kramer Beef. My father liked to say that his father went to the school of hard knocks. He was part of a generation of Jewish entrepreneurs that contributed to the growth of Scranton. Jacob went to England to bring back Ray Posner, a hat maker, whom he married. By all accounts, my father was mischievous. Apparently quit, as he tells it, Hebrew school unilaterally. One day he stopped going. And he said he knew he was caught when he got home after doing something other than going to Hebrew school for the designated time. And his mother said, "How was Hebrew school today?" Jacob died when my father was 16. He sort of delayed his plans to go to college and attended the University of Scranton for a year to be with his mother. And then later, he attended NYU and earned a degree from the School of Commerce, which is now known as the Stern School of Business. My mother, Rita Nybert, also transferred to NYU from Syracuse University to be with him. The first key turning point was when my father was drafted during the Vietnam War. He liked to say that he got married, graduated from college, and got drafted all in the same year, 1966. The Vietnam War was a formative experience for my father, not because he saw combat. As he tells it, he had a year of training, basic training, advanced infantry training, and then he was sent with his unit to the airport to be sent to Vietnam. And when they got to the airport, they were all sitting there, and an officer came out and said, "Your plane left without you. Wait here. We'll arrange for another plane to take you to Vietnam." And the officer disappeared, and then he came back in and he said, "Does anybody here know how to type?" And my father had learned how to type at Madison, that way, middle school, and so he raised his hand. And the officer said, "Come with me." And he then became a supply clerk where he spent his tour of duty in Texas. So it was not a formative experience because of combat, but rather because of the mistrust of government and fear that the experience entailed. He never forgave Lyndon Johnson for, as he put it, drafting him. And that gave him a permanent skepticism toward government activism in general. And this was something I was reminded of watching a documentary recently, that there was a lot of fear surrounding the Vietnam War at that time, especially for people of draft age. Although he did not see combat for a time, he knew that he could be transferred to Vietnam. And he sometimes told me that I was lucky he wasn't sent, or I wouldn't have been born. He used to tell me this when I was a child. When he was in the hospital for the first time for heart bypass surgery in 1999, he flashed back to his Vietnam experience. Because, that might be what we would now call PTSD. After being discharged, my father kind of discounted conventional concerns. These were happy years. They had a lot of friends, a lot of parties at the house. I remember sometimes he would wake my sister and I up, my sister and me up, and take us to the plant, Kramer Beef, in the middle of the night. It would be, very early morning, it was dark outside. We'd go there. He had some business to take care of. I used to play on the forklift. It was pretty interesting to me. We went to Nantucket for a week. We brought 2 Blazers, a housekeeper, and a family friend who was here. Sandy Orleans. It was a lot of fun. We vacationed in Florida. We had fireworks on the 4th of July, which Sandy also provided. So those were happy years. The second key turning point was the death of my mother's father, Al, in 1976. My mother sank into a severe depression with one manic episode. This put my father in a difficult situation. Mental illness was not well understood at the time, and one of the hardest things about it was the isolation that it can bring for families. I was very close to my father in these years. We played catch, we built fires in the fireplace, we watched TV. I learned a lot about politics and the stock market. And I and my sister were encouraged to achieve in school, participate in debate, and aspire to write. The third turning point was the birth of his grandchildren, Elias and Josephine Kramer, who are here with us. When I went to college, my values changed, and my father and I grew apart. But our relationship enjoyed a renaissance of sorts with the birth of my children. He enjoyed he enjoyed our visits on the holidays. Josephine liked talking with him. He asked questions and was very patient with the answers. Elias always enjoyed the toys that he bought for them, which unfortunately included a toy grenade. He played board games with them, including an inscrutably complex game called Shopkins, which wasn't remotely fun. And he had a shrine set up in his TV room where he taped pictures that he printed out to the wall and lit them up with a spotlight. He also developed a nice relationship with my wife, Sarah. Excuse me. She brought food and cooked for him and talked with him about her job, which she was not really sure. The final turning point was his hospitalization. The second, it turns out, followed from the first. Unknown to us, his chest harbored a residual infection that reappeared only 22 years later. This was a very difficult experience for everybody, but especially for my sister and me. I say her first because she was here longer and more of that interruption, and it was very, very difficult for both of us. But during the hours together in his room at Regional Hospital, certain things became clear. I conceded that Tom Brady might be a good football player. I still don't want to admit that. I came to realize that he deserved gratitude for staying with my mother and raising me and my sister, not because he didn't have to, but because he chose to do what he felt was right. I absolved him of any long-standing conflicts. One day, in the hospital, when he was still able to talk, he said, "I'm going to miss you, Jake." That was the last clear thing he said to me. I said, "I'm going to miss you too, Dad." And sure as hell.
Thank you, Jacob. Really?
I said Jacob should go first, but now I'm kind of regretting it. It's a little bit more I have to follow. When we were talking about what we were going to talk about, he said he was going to tell that typing story, and I kind of wanted to tell that one. It's a really good one. I actually told it to one of the doctors in the hospital, and he came back the next day and said, "That was so good, I told my wife that story." But the thing about my dad was there were so many good stories. He was just an exceptional storyteller. He just had the gift. And so I thought I'd just tell a couple more of them. You'll indulge me. There were a lot about growing up in East Scranton. He was part of what he called Harvey Wolfong's gang, which when I mentioned in the hospital, the nurse seemed very alarmed until I explained to her that they were 5. And they basically wandering around East Scranton together in a pack, like of 5-year-old boys that basically it. Also, I guess his uncle, whenever he came back from business trips, would bring him a toy gun, and so he would supply all the neighborhood boys with guns. And I guess he also used to gather up his change and hand it out to all the kids in the neighborhood. And then my Aunt Marilyn, his sister, would go around and get it back. And that was the beginning of a lifelong course of Maryland with mail for him. He had a lot of good stories about high school. As Jacob said, he was an excellent student, but he was a real mischief maker. One of my favorites is that, I guess, my mom was a year behind him. At his graduation, saw him up on stage for the National Honor Society, and she was appalled because she didn't think he was actually in the National Honor Society. And she was like, "Howard, get off the stage!" Because he was actually in the National Honor Society. When we went to NYU, there were good stories. He had a Jaguar. But apparently it would break down at the time, so he said he would just like sit in it. Like sit there. And he told me that they used to like to go to Max's Kansas City, which, is a pretty storied place, but they liked to go there because it had cheap steak and they could bring the dog. But I like to imagine them like sitting there feeding the dog scraps with like Andy Warhol next to her Debbie Harry or something. There are great stories about Vietnam. There was one about he was so tired after guard duty, he was riding around in a Jeep and he fell out of the Jeep, like he was in the passenger seat. He fell asleep, right, in the passenger seat, and then he fell out. Recently, in recent years, he would tell me about how lonely he was and how he and my mom would meet up on the weekends somewhere like New Orleans or something. He would drive back to Texas before she graduated from college and came and met him there. And even though he was very scared to go to Vietnam, it sounded like they kind of had some fun together as a young married couple. My mom was teaching in Texas. In recent years, I've seen him tell those stories to his grandchildren and see how they respond to them and see the way he played with them and watch their shows. And one year he bought 100 light-up bracelets so that we could have a dance party in the living room, or the dining room, sorry. And I realized when I watched him with them the way that he was so fun, but he was always teaching them. He was always answering their questions and explaining things in such a fun way. And realizing that that's probably what he did with me and Jacob. Like, I started having trouble with multiplication tables in, like, I don't know, third grade, when we did multiplication, and he would drill me on them, but it was like a game. I remember seeing my cousin Hillary today. When she was in college, I hope you don't mind my saying, Hillary, she would call every week and say, "Is your father there?" And she would get on the phone with him so he could help her with her college courses. He also had a great appreciation of stories. He knew all the best shows, all the best books. When I ran out of my preaching books and went to him and said I didn't have anything to read, he gave me Catcher in the Rye, Kurt Vonnegut, Hemingway. He would tell me if there was a really great movie out, like Bunny Girl or Doris Day movies, Gigi and Sister Kane. When none of my friends in high school were looking or even thinking about college, he made me sit down with one of those big books and pick out 10 colleges that I wanted to apply to. This was despite my guidance counselor's suggestion that nobody needed to worry about that yet. When I got to college, there was a time in my freshman year, this was, a long time ago now, hard to imagine, but there was an incident where you could show your support for gay rights, and a lot of people I knew didn't want to do that because they thought it would ostracize them, and I was very tortured about it, and I asked him what to do, and he said, "Well, if you do what you think is right, you'll feel good." And I did. And he was right. I recently asked him to tell me his happiest memory, and he said, when you were born, I went to was what's better than that? He loved being our dad. He drove the carpool. My friend Stacy was reminding me how he used to sing Born in the USA in the car. He started when our speech and debate team, which was the best in the state, didn't have enough money to go to nationals for Florida. He and Nancy Wilson and Gus Beatty's mom, Rosemary, and a bunch of other parents started the Speech and Debate Parents Club and raised money so that we could go, and that stayed active. He came to all of the parent meetings, and I would look out and just see him smiling and making people laugh, and I would feel okay. He was a wonderful dancer. He said it was one of the reasons he fell in love with my mom, because she liked to dance, and they were so graceful together on the dance floor. He was a terrific artist. He could draw. He loved Disney and football, musicals, and boxing. He always wanted to know what I was doing, what all my friends were doing, what was cool and happening in New York. He loved a dirty joke, but he was a gentleman. He always carried a handkerchief. When the EMTs came to take him to hospice and asked how he was doing, he said, I'm a little under the weather. He made friends with everyone. People would ask me after my mom died if he was okay, living alone, but it never seemed like he was alone. Everyone who came to the house was his friend. I would call and somebody would be there. Like, one time I was there and the guy came and he stayed for an hour. He talked to my dad. He was like, I watched that show you recommended, Howard, and they talked for an hour. For the past 6 years, we spoke on the phone every day. And recently he went to the doctor and he said, afterward he went to the drive-thru and he got a fountain Coke from McDonald's, Diet Coke. And it was so delicious. And he was so happy talking about it. He just had a talent for happiness. The best stories have great endings, but they're the hardest part. Because they have to sum up everything without being packed, and they have to leave you satisfied but also wanting more. But you know it's over, and then you just want to go right back to the beginning to see how it started. I keep trying to come up with a way to end this. Sometimes I'm binge watching a show or I'm reading a book that I really love, and I don't finish it. I wait and I put it aside and I go back to it when I'm ready. So I decided that's what I'll do now. And I'll just borrow something. I read this yesterday, coincidentally, and it helped me. It's a poem by Mary Oliver. Look, the trees are turning their own bodies into pillars of light, are giving off the rich fragrance of cinnamon and fulfillment. The long tapers of cattails are bursting and floating away over the blue shoulders of the ponds. And every pond, no matter what its name is nameless now. Every year, everything I have ever learned in my lifetime leads back to this. The fires and the black river of loss whose other side is salvation, whose meaning none of us will ever know. To live in this world, you must be able to do 3 things. To love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it. And when the time comes, to let it go. To let it go. Thanks. What I'm going to say is maybe repeating what Jacob and Julie have said, but I did want to just share my perspective in the past few decades of knowing Howard. So
So I wanted to share a few thoughts about what Howard has meant to me and our family over the past several decades. The thing about Howard as a father-in-law, and maybe as a person generally, is that he's pretty non-judgmental and kind of a live and let live kind of guy. He tended to look on the positive side and didn't dwell or overanalyze things. As a daughter-in-law, this created an environment for successful family visits. Scranton for me and for our family became very much of a refuge from New York City over the years, and a place of comfort and good memories. We settled into a bit of a routine, often visiting around Rosh Hashanah and the New Year to celebrate Howard and Julie's September birthdays with Uncle Nico and Julie and Aunt Marilyn. Then Thanksgiving, sometime over the winter, maybe to skiing at Montage, sometimes Passover in the spring. Howard and Rita and Julie let me make myself at home in their kitchen, where I experimented with cooking, something I don't actually do at all. Howard delighted in trying all the new foods, or telling me that my very basic food like hamburgers, squash, and sauteed mushrooms were absolutely delicious. And even when what I made was terrible, I ate it and didn't complain or criticize. So sitting down to meals, much like my own family upbringing, became a really special time for conversation and connection around food. When we arrived in Scranton, Howard almost always had a new gift for the kids, carefully picked out for their age and gender. Pick-up sticks, a jewelry making kit, like Julie said, tricycles, a camping tent they set up in the basement. Julie and Jacob often mentioned to me, as Julie just did, that Howard is a very good artist and was very interested in art. Each time we arrived in Scranton, there would be a new photo framed or hung in an informal gallery of photos, as Jacob referred to, carefully curated by Howard from those we had posted recently on social media. Through this display, we silently shared a joy and pleasure in my children and snapshots of their lives that has meant the world to me. We always picked out the best pictures. We always had that very one. But beyond the gifts, Howard loved to engage with the kids and with everyone present. He was inquisitive. He always asked the kids about what was new, listening to their trials and tribulations with classes, teachers, friends, and sports. He remembered the stories they had recounted and the names of their friends, and he understood their unique personalities and temperament, giving me tips and advice along the way. Maybe more than anything, Howard was also open-minded and easygoing. He always went with our plan. If we were going apple picking or skiing or to Target or to see friends, he was just happy to hear about what we did when we finally got back home. As part of our visits, I would often linger and cook dinner on Sunday evening before we headed back to New York City. Jacob would take a nap in the late afternoon so that he was rested for the drive back. During this time, Howard was often watching TV, and I would just pop in and out of the TV room as I was cooking, telling him bits and pieces about what was going on in my life. Even when I interrupted his football game or his TV show, he just sat there and listened. And no matter what I said, he was always supportive about my professional role and my role as a mother. He'd just tell me, Sarah, you can just get another job and the kids are going to be fine. You're doing a great job. It's no surprise then that Howard helped raise two incredible children, Jacob and Julie. They're both intellectual, accomplished, principled, progressive, and caring. Like Julie said, I wish we had more memories, and I'm having trouble processing that there won't be any more, but they will live on in his grandchildren and all of us, and we will miss you, Papa.
People. So a lot of what I said is also similar to what the rest of the family said, but I hope some of it is unique to me. So I just want to say that the greatest thing about Papa to me was not only that he loved me, but that he really knew how to show it. And each year on my birthday, he would send me a card. And although each card would only have a few words, you could see how much he meant to each and every one of them. One year, the card read, "To my fabulous granddaughter," with a button that he could press to play songs from Charlie Brown. And he always liked to do things in a way that was simple, but that simplicity made it so that I would always be able to remember those small things that he did for me. And as much of the family said, almost every time we visited, there was a gift that he would be eager to show us. And one year he got us a tetherball, another was Nerf guns, and once again, what made these gifts so special was that you could see that he was trying to show his love through them, and that he was trying to make you feel like you were wanted. And as Julie said, one year we got rings, glow sticks, bracelets, and we turned off the lights, turned on music, and just had a really good time with a glow-in-the-dark dance party. And he always really appreciated every single thing that you did for him. He was always so grateful for each and every visit. And his happiness and positivity was contagious, and I always left his home in better spirits than when I had arrived. But what I miss most about him are little things. He seemed to always be there, ready to tell us a story about being in the army, or make us all laugh with a joke at the table. Part of me still expects him to be sitting in the same spot on the couch, watching the stock market and football as we walk in. I miss the sound of his walker, the way he would sometimes start singing out of nowhere, the games he played with us, and the curiosity and genuine interest he would express in things happening in our lives. He made you feel heard, he made you feel wanted, and he made you feel accepted. And I know that I will always remember these little things that he did that made me feel cared for. And I hope that today we can all honor Pop-Pop's incredible spirit and personality, and that he will live on through all of our memories. Thank you so much for listening. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much to all of you. Jacob, Julia, Sarah, and Josephine. It was meaningful words. I would only add about Howard. I didn't know him until 2015, even though I know from the history of Temple Israel, he grew up and raised in Scranton, and he grew up in Temple Israel, and he got his bar mitzvah there, and then of course Jacob and Julie, of course after that, they were part of the Temple Israel family. My first experience, of course, was when Rita, his wife, died, and I made a shiva call. It calls for people who don't know what shiva. It's a visitation after the funeral, and I remember the fact that I was there in the house, but Julie refreshed my memory when I visited them this Friday, and she refreshed my memory about my conversations with Howard, which I remembered right away when Julie mentioned to me. Yes, he was very interesting talker and very interesting gentleman in those days. He asked me, he knew that I'm originally from Russia, and he asked me about Putin, my opinion about Putin, and I was trying to be politically correct. I didn't want to just say exactly what I mean, but he wanted to know my opinion about what happened in Russia and all my political views, and he gave me his opinion. I don't know exactly details of our conversation, but it was a very interesting experience. And it went long. It went long. Not like that. You mentioned that he can talk and talk, and then I respect it. I respect every word he said. So I would say people like Howard, to me, it's all people exceptional, the God's people. But he was, after what I know right now from the family and my visit in those days, he was quite a special person. And making memory be a blessing for all of us. Like in our books, in the words of Ecclesiastes, says, a season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for dancing, and a time for wailing, a time for birthing, and a time for dying, a time for speaking, and a time for silence, a time for seeking and time for losing. The time of mourning is a complicated time, filled with many emotions and memories, both bitter and sweet. As usually, by our traditions, I'm going to chant another Psalm of David. Adonai Yago v'Halecha, Yishbo v'Argachecha, Olek Damim u'Forever Tzedek, V'Daber Milvado, Lo Regapala Lev V'Shono, Lo Asar Reigura, V'Cherpalo Asar Arkeherobo, Yibazeh Beinam Yimabas, V'Drev Yikapever, Nishba Leharav V'Yamir, Kaspolo Notavat V'Nesher V'Shotavat, Anaki Lolakahat, Osele Lo Imot Leolam. Psalm 15. O Lord, who shall dwell in your sanctuary? Who shall abide upon your holy mountain? He who lives with integrity, does what is right, and speaks the truth in his heart, who has no slander upon his tongue, who does no evil to his fellow man, who does not reproach his neighbor. In his eyes a vile person is despised, but the others, those who revere the Lord. He takes note even his own harm, and does not change. He does not lend money at insurance interest. He does not take a bribe against the innocent. Whoever does these things shall stand firm forever. In our books of Pirkei Avot, we have three principles which people have. And like we're saying in this book says, Haver Tov, good friend. Shochein Tov, good neighbor. Leiv Tov, good heart. That I came to these particular thoughts after what I was listening, after I know who his Hubbard is. He deserves all these principles, and we live based on these principles. Eternal God, our Creator, with the gift of your Spirit we are formed. You take it in return, and we are but dust. We are grateful for the many blessings in the life of Howard Allen Kramer, bowed by grief because of their loss. His mourners turn to you, seeking comfort and light. Lord of compassion, grant them solace and strength. Bring forth their faith, for you are our rock and our Redeemer. Adonai Natan, Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. The Lord has given, and the Lord has taken away. Praise be the name of the Lord, and we all say Amen. Please rise for the memorial prayer. Ben Yaakov, Berachel, Shalom, Begalin in the Adonai Udrato, Ve'anu Shalom, Al Mishkavo, Ve'lamar, Amen. O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence. Demand the holy and pure to the soul of Howard Allen Kramer, Tzvi ben Yaakov ben Rachel, who has gone to his eternal home. Master of mercy, we beseech you, remember all the worthy and righteous deeds that he performed in the land of the living. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. The Lord is his portion. May he rest in peace. And let us say amen. Please remain standing.
On behalf of the President of the United States Army, and a grateful nation, please accept this flag as a symbol of appreciation for the most honorable faithful.
Careful stepping out the straps and walk the front, please.
Come close.
Folks, if you would, please move a little closer to the canopy for the service.
עצור תמיד יפלו וכי כל דרך המשפט אל ולבנה ולצדיק וישרו עצור תמיד בכל פעל מיומה ולא במה תפעל עד שליבית במפמת אומר ממית בחיי מוריד שואל ויעל צדיק בכל דרך עצור תמיד פרק הפעים ומולה רחמים עמלנה בחוזנה לבוא דובנים לך אדון הסליחות והרחמים אדם בן שנה יהיה או 1000 שנים יחיה מה ידרום ולא בבוא כי לא היה יהיה ברוך דיין אמת, ממית ומחייב. ידענו אור נגיד צדק משפטיך, תצדק בדבריך ותזכה בשוב ובבבתך. ולהרהר אחר מידת שופטיך, צדיק אדוני, וישר משפטיך. גדול יצבר רבה הלליה אשר עיניך פקוחות על כל דרכי בני אדם לתת לאיש כדרכו וכי יפרים עליו להגיד כי יושר אדוני צורי בלו עוולו ובטפו Adonai natan Adonai lakar Yeshem Adonai memoraho Zehura po v'chaper avo v'lashkit Ve'yirba le'ashiv avo Ve'lo yahir kol chamato. And now we get into the point to fulfill the greatest mitzvah, the good deeds. In our Judaism, what does it mean? To put dirt on the casket, to pay final farewell to whoever deceased, because the person cannot pay you back. This is the mitzvah when we have a the most meaningful mitzvah. I'm going to show you the way it works. First you take shovel opposite way and do one drop, and then few times normal way. It means you kind of have resistance to the normal way, but you have to do it. It's like your last touch to the person, to the casket. Basically, what I just said, you want to do like this, opposite way, a couple times normal way, and when you're done, just put back the shovel. Do not pass it. Just anybody next will do by there, or first the family and then friends and relatives. Please, you can start, and then later on we can use both sides. Whatever amount you can catch, that doesn't have to be a full shovel. Please feel free, if you decide, please, also you can join us. At this point, we're going to stop this particular process, and I'm going to continue service as well. I'm going to take care of the coverage of the grave with the 21st century equipment later on, after everyone will be laid in the cemetery. But right now, we still have to do some ritual readings, and right now I would like to ask mourners to join me in Mourners Kaddish. This right. Yid Gadal v'Yid Kadash Shmei Rabba Be'alma Divra Chirutei Be'yamlich Malchutei Be'chayichon U'vyom echon U'vchayei Dechol Beit Yisrael Ba'agala U'bizman Karif Ve'imru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevorach Le'olam Olalmei Almaya Yitbarach Ve'ishtabach Ve'itpa'ar Ve'itromam Ve'itnasei Ve'itadar Ve'italeh Ve'italal Shmei Dikudisha Brihu Le'ela Min Kol Birchata Ve'shirata Tush Bechata Bnei Chamata Da'amiran Be'alma Ve'imru Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya V'chaim Aleinu V'yal Kol Yisrael Ve'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom Bimromav Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu V'yal Kol Yisrael Ve'imru Amen. And the last action, what we have to do right now, by our tradition, when we finishing our cemetery ceremony, we form two lines towards all cars, and mourners is going through, and we saying all words of comfort. Let's form two lines, probably this line and this line. And they will going through, and the proper words, whatever you have in your mind, whatever you can say, give a hug or kiss, but the proper words while they're walking will be. You start walking. Hamakom menachem etchem b'toch she'ar v'lei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. May the Lord comfort and sustain you among the other mourners was Zion in Jerusalem. Amen. Only good things should happen in our life, and joyful occasions. That next time we all see each other only when we have all kind of joyful and beautiful events. And I'll take care of the coverage, so we'll help the people.